you referred to is that, the gyms are more than just bros and stringer tees, and I can't remember the exact quote off the top of my head, but it's also about, young women building confidence and older adults, maintaining their strength and their mental health. And a lot of it was about sustaining mental health and well-being.
One. Hello, Andrew. Welcome to my Behind the Body podcast. How do you say your last name? Coates?
Andrew Coates.
Perfect. So, like I already mentioned, this is basically just a little bit different than what most bodybuilding podcasts is about. It's basically just getting your followers, getting to know you, who you are, what you do, what your background is, how you grew up, what got you to lifting, and then basically just who you are as an individual, rather than just hey, Andrew, you work out, you're big, you're jacked, and you post all these awesome Twitter posts. Cool. So it's a little bit more than that.
That's funny. I think this is the first time that I've been a guest with someone who's more jacked than me. I've had guests on my podcast who are more jacked than me. I mean, Mike Israel's done mine several times. And, despite the fact that Mike and I weigh about the same size, I'm about inches taller than him. And
I actually weigh less than you.
What?
Way less than you.
Dude, you're a freak. Seriously, you are one hell of a jack dude. I saw you put up something just a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hell yeah, okay, man, you're just right. I don't compete as a bodybuilder. I grew up around that world. I think my first exposure to a lot of this stuff was things like, flex and muscle and fitness and whatnot, which is kind of funny because you connected with me over a post that I made recently about, quote, gym bros. We'll get back into that.
Yeah.
And I woke up and found that Muscle and Fitness magazine had actually put the same quote right on their front wall of their Instagram. I'm like, holy shit, okay, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I used to work out in a gym in Newfoundland, St. John's, Newfoundland, the east coast of Canada, where I'm originally from. I now live in Edmonton, Alberta. And, working out next to me is an old pal of mine, Frank McGrath, who's a really well-known pro bodybuilder,
Yeah.
He's famous for the,
his veins and the little dark gray pictures and stuff like that.
Oh, totally. Yeah. He was all, the animal
that's what
marketing for forever. He was one of their main athletes. And great dude. I picked up a lot of stuff from him, way back when. And I've always bodybuilding culture, with the images of Arnold Schwarzenegger and his community in the late 60s and 70s and whatnot. And then on to guys like Kevin Levrone, was one of my favorites during, I guess, he was most active, I think, in the 90s. And then on to Ronnie Coleman and whatnot. But at the same time, I guess where I started, I suppose, I had a weight bench in my basement when I was a kid. Dad bought it for me. I didn't really know what I was doing. I wasn't super serious. I was in a lot of sports, individual and high school team sports in rural Newfoundland. And then went to university, got away from working out with consistency. And I got really serious at 24 years of age. I'd had a bad flu. I got down to 170 pounds and I'm 6'2". And I've been walking around for a few years at about 255, 260, right? And I'm a pretty lean guy. I'm not shredded, but I'm a pretty lean guy at that weight. So big human being. But back then, 170 pounds on my frame didn't feel good. So I got serious with the gym, 5 days a week. Would skip the leg days as often as I wouldn't in the earliest stages of it.
Everyone does that in the earliest days of their lifting career. It's like, you don't look
like I always did the bro splits, and people like to malign them, but honestly, they're profoundly effective. Any way you structure workouts is really effective if you enjoy it and you're consistent. You obviously can't go skipping critical things like your legs. And later on, I got really serious about the lower body training, and I love to squat heavy. And like some of the stuff I've been doing, like I've got one article already on T Nation, another one on the way about Hatfield or supported Bulgarian squats. Is something that I really like a lot. And there's a bunch of other stuff up on there about lower body training because it's one of my favorite things to do. It's one of my favorite things to coach. So along the way, I got more serious, but a lot of the early stuff was coming from fucking bodybuilding magazines. And that sort of sounds astonishing to people given the stuff that I'm plugged into now.
Yeah.
But, that stuff was really accessible. And there's a lot of goofy information in them, but there still was a lot of decent information underpinning all that goofy stuff. And if you develop a radar for good information from bad information, and that's probably one of the most valuable skills anyone can develop as a lifter, and especially as a coach, right? Mm-hmm. I read Wheat Belly early in my career, and I thought, hey, this stuff sounds great. Wheat's bad. And you fucking realize it's bullshit. And you got to go through stuff like that to be, I think the better coach for other people, because you got to understand why someone else can read crap like, something that Jason Fung writes or Dr. Oz or whatever. And I don't like complaining about those individuals. They're out there.
Yeah.
I think we as fitness professionals need to have a much better message to compete against those people instead of bitching about them. So, you develop this filter over time. And then I started my career 10 years ago after various other things that were not, fitness career related. And it was something I fell into. It wasn't really like, hey, I'm passionate about this. I want to be a trainer. I didn't come out of high school going, hey, I want to coach people. I mean, that's a long time ago. Personal training was barely a thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't, what you see, social media. There was no fucking social media when I was, graduating high school, right?
And there was no online coaching. Everything was just like done at the gym. It was barely ever even a thing at that point.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how it's evolved over such a short period of time.
And even 10 years ago, like, online training was just the realm of the names that we all knew who wrote for T Nation, your Tony Gentilcourt, your Brian Cron. Like, Brian was just here at the house picking up a set of dumbbells that a friend of mine sold to him.
Yeah.
Brian's a legendary coach in our world.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we're just chatting just before we got on air. And he's been doing that online stuff for forever. But there was always this like, okay, I'm a gym floor trainer. And then here's all these people who are, hey, they're T Nation writers and they're established and they're successful, whatever. And I never thought that there was sort of anything, any in between, or we could ever achieve that sort of thing. And so over time it's been kind of cool to step into those circles. But gym floor trainer, absorbing everything I could, reading a lot of T Nation stuff, reading other textbooks and resources that I could get my hands on, and then diving deeper into the stuff that people like Brian were writing, or Tony Gentilcourt were writing, or Eric Cressy, or John Berardi, Martin Rooney, the people that have been out there in that space. And then along the way, I came across Mike Isertel, who I know you are close with. And Mike is one of my favorite resources for engaging, but really high quality scientific information, but it's also really useful stuff. I think he's one of the best out there. And he puts
I think the one thing that separates Mike from everybody else is, yes, Mike is a little bit more like by the book, but he has some leeways where he creates other things where it's just not by the book. I think with most people, particularly like in the evidence-based community, is that it's always just like by the book, by the book, by the book. If it doesn't work this way, then it's not going to work any other way. It's just like, if you don't do it by the book, you're not going to do it. But like you were saying earlier, it's always good to have like different opinions. Like when it comes to just coaching itself, it's more about just like having two avenues of learning, where there's the bro science and then there's the science. But if you combine it together, you basically get the best of both worlds. And with Mike, that is exactly what he does.
Well, just mentioning Brian Cron. I mean, Brian is a fantastic coach. He's a legendary coach. And Brian understands the science of training. He also understands, that bodybuilding world and a lot of the psychological basic principles that works for an everyday person. And, I've seen Brian talk about how you can give, a certain person a rule like don't eat after 9 p.m. Now, we in the evidence-based community, we know, okay, there's no danger in eating a calorie after 9 p.m. or before bed than there is one at 9 a.m. We know there's no difference in those calories. And a lot of sometimes the evidence-based community can be a bit tribal and a bit elitist to this stuff. And then you say any sort of message like, hey, yeah, my client doesn't eat after 9 p.m. and they'll freak out. You're like, oh, that's wrong, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, this person is prone to eating garbage, because we know that's what humans do. At the end of the day, they're tired, whatever. They reach for the snack garbage, and that's the kind of stuff that they're eating late. And that's why there's this correlation between eating later calories and weight gain, right? It's not a causal relationship, it's correlational. And if you identify an individual who A, likes structure and rule-based stuff, and B, is buying into that, you don't tell someone to do something they're not going to do. You got to make them sort of choose it too. That helps a lot when people make the choice to do something versus you telling them what to do. Unless they're explicitly saying, here, give me it on a piece of paper, I'll fucking follow it, because they're very adherent.
That's fine, because that's exactly what I do with my clients. I understand that people do certain exercises, some love certain exercises. So like every time I write a program, I don't just like, it's not about like cookie cutter. It's just like, hey man, give me a list of 3 exercises per body part that you love to do, so I can create this, design this program based off what you like to do, and now you can kind of go in the gym and look forward to it. It's the same thing I do with food choices too.
Absolutely. It's like, I've got tons of clients who fucking hate lunges. They can't stand them. So guess what I'm not going to make them do? I'm not making them do lunges. No, they're going to hate it, or they won't do it on their own. Or it's going to disrupt the consistency and the flow of what they're doing. They're going to fucking dread it, and all of a sudden you notice that, oh, they cancel leg day every time it comes around to your session, right? It's like, Okay, so as a coach, you've got to find the shit that works for your clients.
Yeah,
And I'm
exactly.
wandering all the fuck over the place here, but that's the way the journey has been.
Mm,
So kind of circling back to your original question, yeah. So I just head down personal trainer in a gym setting, a commercial gym for 6 years, and I worked a lot of hours. The typical sort of push and mass amounts of sessions. I got very very good at generating referrals and keeping my clients and building relationships and whatnot. And then I got out of the commercial gym space because it was no longer working for me. Became a really problematic environment.
yeah.
I
Why
went
is
to
that?
what say again?
Why is that?
I mean, I don't want to riff on it too much, but
Mm,
any trainer who's been in a commercial gym, they know there's pros and cons. You have a lot of transient, young-minded employees, and I don't mean transient as in like homeless people. I mean transient in as that younger population that tends to move from job to job, the same way the restaurant and the bar industry is transient, and a lot of those people also work in those industries.
yeah.
And while a lot of those people are very good people, and I owned a nightclub back in Newfoundland, I've worked as bar security and done all those things, but you know what goes on in that world. And on average, that young-minded environment, especially if you collect a lot of those people together, can create problems. I've also seen that at a first tier management level, you get a lot of people who aren't really qualified to do much else, but then end up in these roles. Let's just say between the two different types of managers, there's a facility manager and a trainer manager.
Yeah.
And I think I probably had a grand total of 9 or 10 managers in my time. I'm friends with and have good relationships with about half of them. And the other half, I wouldn't piss on if they were on fire, because the presence of sexual harassment was terrible in that environment, predatory multi-level marketing recruitment,
Mm,
and just generally inconsistent abusive garbage. So I decided I needed to get out of that environment. I went to a friend's athletic facility where I've been ever since. And then a lot of other trainers followed me out and have been set up in these companies, different locations, and done well. That includes Dean Somerset. He followed me a year later. He's a well-known name in our world, and it's treated me really well. And then I started to travel into the U.S. To conferences. Dean Somerset and Mike Isertel did a local thing together that was brought in, a local conference. That was the first time I'd met Mike. I'd had him on Facebook before that. We got to sit down and have dinner. And then every time Mike comes to town, it's an annual thing, except Hoffman and Melissa Davis was here last time. And so I always make sure we always get to sit down and have dinner. And Mike's been a really great friend and a supporter. And he's someone he's boosted my social media a lot this year by sharing my work. So that's been really cool of him. I'm guessing that's probably how you found me, because I know he keeps sharing my stuff. So,
yeah. Well,
and
I think Joseph was sharing your stuff on my Facebook, but every time I look, I'm like, this guy kind of thinks kind of the exact same way that I do in terms of like fitness and stuff like that. And then that post that Joseph shared, I was like, I commented and I was like, I commented, Andrew, I'd like you to be on my thing. But then my friend called me and I wasn't able to finish the sentence. So I just like kind of like left it off there for a bit. But it's not just that, but also it's like the things that you post are just, I like to simplify things. And the things that you post are just so simple and anyone can understand it and not make it too complicated. And that's all.
I think that's important, right? I mean, there's people say there's two really important things that if you want to stand out and be a content creator and educator in our spaces, you either have to be someone who is breaking new ground in terms of research, evidence-based stuff. Your Brad Schoenfelds, or Brett Contreras and his glute work is a good example of that. And I think Mike Isertel fits into that realm too. But
Mm,
then you have people who are great simplifiers, and Mike also does that role where you take the complicated advanced science stuff, the research, and you turn it into something that speaks to the masses. And between his own individual stuff and through Renaissance Periodization, he's one of my favorite outlets. And Paul, Mike is someone that you and I, Paul, know together, so that's why we keep kind of talking about it. But he's been a major influence on me, so I would be remiss to get on a podcast and talk about this sort of stuff without kind of pointing people to say, here, listen, go follow Mike, go plug into stuff he's doing. He's also, on top of being one of the smartest people in our space, he's also one of the funniest. So you hear him on podcasts, and I'm sometimes crying,
yeah.
after with the shit he's saying, right? And just the way he delivers it. So, but let's go back to what you're saying about like the simplified message in social media and stuff. people are kind of funny. Like they sort of get a bit negative about the idea of growing an Instagram following. Let's use it because I worked on that, and I quite literally last night before I went to bed had hit 10,000 followers. It was something I said, "Hey, I'm going to try to do this year." I was focused on the process,
Yeah.
not the outcome. And you've grown yourself. You've got a bigger following than I do.
Mm.
But what these same people complain about Dr. Jason Fung. They complain about Dr. Oz. They complain about Vani Hari, the food babe. And meanwhile, you're like thinking somehow you're selling out or somehow it's a bad thing to create a social media reach. I mean, having more followers is literally engaging with and having more people to talk to and show your work to. And if you've got good quality simplified messages that are going to help people, isn't that the fucking point of all this, is to reach more people? So
Yeah.
why would you be negative about actually having more people's eyes on you? I think that's where we should devote our attention instead of uselessly complaining about the shit beyond our control, which I think not all, but far too many fitness professionals get into it. You know, you mentioned Joseph, our friend Joseph Chop.
Mm.
Great guy, really, really awesome guy. Shares a lot of my stuff on Facebook. And what do you notice on his posts? There's a cluster of people in the industry who go in there and they shit talk. But Lee Boyce is a good friend of mine. Lee's an amazing dude. And I remember he shared an article of Lee's, and there's this community of people, almost all of whom have accomplished, and it just sounds negative, but nothing meaningful in the fitness space to educate or help other people. You
Yeah.
know, long form content, career capital to help people.
It's always just negativity.
And they're just tearing Lee down and attacking his character. And Lee is a really great guy, really caring human being. You know, he's a quiet, introverted personality, shares a lot of stuff, and he pushes buttons, sure, with some of his ideas. But he's a great coach. And I see this stuff and I'm like, well, I'm losing respect for, not that I had much for the people who are complaining about him. And I continue to support Lee. I've had him on my podcast a bunch of times. I'll share his work. I like him. And, you know, I hope this sort of philosophy seeps through anybody who, you know, gets in that habit of getting into these shit poster clusterfucks on Facebook, especially. I find Instagram I enjoy more because you get less of that.
Mm.
And it's also a sign to me that someone has way too much time on their hands. You know, if you're a busy coach, you know, maybe you should be coaching people, or maybe you should be writing stuff to help people instead of just complaining about what other people are doing.
I
So
will be honest with that. I do tend to find myself in that particular situation because it's not just that. It's just like I understand like there's all these like different coaches and different people, but what I have an issue with are just fitness, particularly high level fitness influencers giving out the wrong information. That bothers me a lot. Like someone would say, hey, within 2 weeks, you do this, you'll get abs. Like, no, you're not going to. Like, if you just do abs every day, you're going to get abs. Or if you do like 4 sets of 10 on everything, you're going to get gains and stuff like that. And that bothers me because I feel like these influencers have such high influence over hundreds of thousands of people, but yet they're sending out the wrong information. And when they send out that wrong information with all those people that they're influencing, that thing spreads out and it just becomes a whole community of disinformation that nobody really knows what they're doing, and they buy into like all these like extra like things that just don't work. But that's just one of the things that bothers me because I would love for like most people who are into working out, who are into training, to get the right information rather than just some like bullshit freaking information.
right, and you know what, those influencers are never going to go away. People
Yeah.
call regulation our industry. Regulation doesn't stop these people. None of them are fucking certified anyway. So regulation, if anything, just added regulation just chokes off the people who are trying to make a difference. I mean, yeah, we want to improve the quality industry, and we have two choices: complain about those people and they're not going away, meanwhile they're busy engaging with the people we're trying to help, or two,
Yeah.
our message better, work really hard at creating those simplified, accessible messages that you mentioned earlier
Mm.
that pull more people in, because people get soaked into this oversimplified stuff. They want simple answers to complex problems. That's a human condition, and the fitness and dieting industry preys upon it. We know that.
Yeah.
What do we get into this for? We got into this to help people, and the best way we can help them is to gain their attention
Mm.
through a great message, engage with them. And, you know, Mike is not, you know, Mike Israel's not a household name, but he's built a really good following. He's well respected in our world and he shares great information. And I really am interested in taking that kind of road where more people see what I'm doing. And if you 99% of the time are positive and making effort with all these people and trying to help them. And every once in a while, it's really easy to go in and then respond critically to something that you see.
Mm.
So that's my philosophy. And I try to encourage a lot of other trainers and coaches to see it that way. You'll see Mike. Mike will, he's a busy man, but he will get into Facebook discussions. Absolutely. But he's
Yeah.
tactical in there. And he knows how to play to the audience. And he also knows how to be respectful to someone who maybe disagrees with him, up to the point where someone is a miserable asshole. Like you see Charlie was posted about Lyle had gone,
Lyle. Yeah, I saw
and
that.
Mike has torn Lyle apart on my own podcast. Lyle actually took a pot shot at me over someone sharing one of my memes
Mhm.
and doesn't know a goddamn thing about me. And I just responded by saying, Lyle, I've heard nothing good about you in the entire industry. Thanks for like validating everything that I've heard, you know. And Lyle is not someone who I have any interest. He'll never be on my podcast.
Mm.
And I'm never going to share his work. I'm not going to buy his stuff. I'm not going to support this man because, I think it was Mike even said in response to my comment that, Lyle has made himself totally irrelevant in our world.
Yeah.
He's not one of the good guys.
Mm.
And I couldn't put someone like him on my podcast or endorse him because I can't trust him not to be a scathing asshole in response to a follower of mine who trusts me for recommendations. So, but that's it. That's the extent of what I'll say about it. And then I want to move on and I want to spend all my energy on all the nice things I just said about Lee Boyce and the nice things I just said about Mike Isertel
Mm.
and all the other coaches that I love and respect. So our world is full of a ton of really great people. So I
It
still
really is.
want to focus on that positive stuff.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it really is. And I think recently it's what I've been trying to do. And when you mentioned the way that Mike runs his Instagram and how he engages with people, I kind of sort of took that route where I'm like, okay, I do see that people post up pictures and stuff all the time, which is nice. But I would like to do that too. But at the same time, I want to add something in there, give a little bit of a value that they can just kind of learn from rather than just be like, hey, man, here's a selfless picture of me. And then that's kind of it. Like, I don't really give much value to people and like I look better than you. But if I were to like post a picture like that, grab their attention and then be like, hey, swipe this way to get more information and learn something new. You get their attention through the picture, but then now they can kind of just swipe and I'm like, oh wow, I just learned something new today. And I'm really, really, really big into anime. So I kind of like to put that in there as well because I realize that like majority of the guys who work out watch anime. Literally, everybody watches anime. So I figured, okay, why don't I just combine that with lifting, with giving out advice and just helping a lot of people, and also being able to engage with the people as well. Now that I've been doing that, it's just like that's kind of how slowly my following has kind of been going up because I genuinely care about people and I want people to be successful, but also at the same time, I want to create a space where I have all this group of people that they can learn, be entertained, and it will give a little bit of like what my life is here and there, and then kind of like explain to them this is what I do, this is what I do outside of just lifting, and this is who I am, and kind of just give like it's my space. So I want them to kind of know everything about me from just lifting to dating life to like doing this and like stuff like that. And I try to basically just create a huge community in a sense.
Well, it's humanizing, right? And this goes to the post you mentioned, so we may as well dive into it.
Mhm.
It's someone might look at you. You are jacked and shredded, right? You've
Mhm.
worked really hard. You clearly have also like phenomenal genetics for this stuff. And it's
Mhm.
a combination of a lot of good things. So someone on the surface could look at this guy and be like, "Oh, look at this gym bro," right? But you've focused on humanizing yourself and letting people see a lot of depth to what your experience is. So the post you referred to is that the gyms are more than just bros and stringer tees, and I can't remember the exact quote off the top of my head, but it's also about, young women building confidence and older adults, maintaining their strength and their mental health. And a lot of it was about sustaining mental health and well-being.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really important message right now. And I'm again, instead of crying about politicians shutting gyms down, it's more of a, hey, it's a call to action to the industry. Let's humanize the people affected by this because we want to change two things. One is we want to change a perception that gyms are just bros and stringer tees. But then two, it's, well, those bros and stringer tees who were the first people to start sharing that post,
Yeah.
they are real people who came from places of sometimes addiction, drug stuff, drinking, whatever. I mean, I used to own a nightclub after hours. There was a lot of partying life going on in there. And trust me, the gym helped pull me out of that world, and I'm nowhere near that world anymore, right?
Mhm.
So A lot of people don't know that, right? A lot of my friends who look like men's physique guys and bikini girls came out of those worlds, and they're doing it for their mental health. So
Yeah.
they're more than just a stereotype.
Mm.
So I want people to see that stuff. And then I also want people to see, on my social media feed, everybody sees Larry. He's a client of mine that I feature. He's 70 years old. He's got this, grizzled Santa sort of thing going on. He's strong as hell. And everybody loves videos of him. He's got a better squat than, in terms of like how he moves, than like half of my people who are 30.
Yeah.
He likes the deadlift heavy on a trap bar, and he's pulled 400 pounds on a trap bar. He can carry 110 pounds across my 20-meter turf and back with relative ease for sets. I put up a lot of video of that. And, we're trying to make sure Larry stays physically and mentally healthy, right? And if you shut the gyms down on him, and then he's home and isolated, his wife is no longer with us. And then one of the big things I've noticed in the last, from 10 years ago, 8 to 10 years ago to now, the quality of what I see in gyms from the everyday people, the young, all gym members,
Yeah.
there's a greatly improved quality of exercise in the gym. But then I stopped and I thought about it. It's like, well, the bros haven't changed and the old guys haven't changed at all. They're still doing the same shit. And then there's more older women who are feeling more comfortable in gym spaces, but it's a massive influx of younger women who are doing smart shit. You can see that they know how to, they're all doing hip thrusts, which is super popular on social media. They're all squatting really well. They're all lunging. They're doing upper body training. They're doing chin-ups. And somewhere along the way, our industry has done something right with getting this information into their hands. And I think sometimes those influencers are also realizing, wait a second, like there's a lot of good stuff here. So maybe not all their message is good, but
Yeah.
somehow or other, I'm noticing that the quality of what we're seeing every day in a commercial gym is getting better and better. And sure, yeah, there's still old guys who are leering at the women and, walking around naked in this change rooms trying to talk to you and weird shit like that. But I feel like we're still doing a decent job. At a greater societal level, we definitely have to crack into breaking some of these stupid myths. But I still believe in, to the best of our ability, just reaching more eyes and creating more positive message.
And to add on to that, you are 100% right. I actually started lifting around 2013 or 2012, 2013. And the information back then to the information that we have currently is just so much more different. But back then, you didn't have women who were just lifting weights and then just kind of like doing like the right program. They were always just like doing cardio and stuff like that, and then just like hours and hours of cardio. But like now in 2020, with all the effect of like the influencers kind of giving out more information, being able to be like, okay, you don't necessarily have to do cardio all the time, but you can implement that. But you can also lift weights and have the right diet, and you also don't have to eat like 400 calories just to lose weight. And in 2020, I'm seeing that there's so many more people who are doing that a lot more down and now than ever before. And it's refreshing to see.
I just wrote about this, right? The whole idea of strength training and cardio, right? That sort of contrast. And yeah, you get a lot of people think, well, I need to do cardio for weight loss. Cardio is a very distant third option for weight loss. Your nutrition's number one. Nutrition will be the best driver of fat loss, and then strength training. Now, it's not a one-to-one straightforward relationship, but if you give someone a good, intense hour of strength training, you actually burn a surprising amount of calories doing that.
Yeah.
And comparatively, it compares better than most people think to an hour of low intensity, steady state cardio. People are trying to argue this thing and be like, you burn a lot more calories running. Well, keep in mind, not everybody can sustain a very intense hour of running. I mean, sure, you can do high intensity interval stuff for like 15, 20 minutes, but we're not dealing with a lot of Olympic athletes here. We're talking about kind of everyday people. So the amount of calories burned is more similar than people think. And two, steady state cardio does not have, I hate the term afterburn effect because it's misleading, right? It's used in
I heard that afterburn effect was for high intensity intervals.
It is, and it's a little overstated, but there is no afterburn effect for steady state cardio. Really, it's so negligible, it's not even worth mentioning. But what happens when you do regular strength training? It does elevate your metabolic rate, the amount of calories you burn, because you're burning calories to recover from the workout. Recover your nervous system, repair, rebuild micro trauma to muscle cells and to joint tissue, right? And that effect does increase your caloric burn. So if you factor that in, you can pretty much equal out the caloric burn of an hour of strength training versus cardio, unless you're talking about someone who's doing some pretty high level intense cardio stuff for that hour, right? And that's not a lot of people. Then, it's an overstated effect, but over time, the more lean muscle mass you have, the more calories you need to sustain it. Guys like you and me and Mike, big fucking muscular guys, we require a lot more calories than people who don't have our kind of muscle. But you put on 5-10 pounds of muscle, that part's oversold, but over time it does matter. And then, cardio does have mood enhancing effects. It has cardiovascular health benefits. Those things are true. But if you look at strength training, I mean, we're talking improved blood pressure. We're talking improved blood sugar. We're talking improved bone mineral density, which is fucking critical for older adults and especially women. We're talking about some really powerful mood, mental health enhancing effects, right? And then you look at the habits and the cascading benefits of just how you approach all the other behaviors in your life when you are a regular gym going strength training person versus someone who is not in that mode. And anyone listening who's been in both places at different points in their life, I know I have, we know the difference in how we do everything else. And when you add all that stuff up, it becomes this vicious upward spiral of good through our lives. My career has been an example of that. I have little doubt it's the same thing for you. So, and this is why when in a situation of limited time and resources, if we have a choice between just a few hours a week of strength training or a few hours a week of cardio, I believe, and I don't like using superlative language, I think we should almost always choose the strength training within our ability to work within our maximum recoverable volume. Here's some Mike Israel stuff right there. Going beyond that's stupid, but I'm not talking about someone who's got 4 hours a day to train, who can do 2.5 hours of strength training and still do another hour of cardio, right? Very, very few people can do that. Very few people have that kind of time. So we're not talking about those people. We're talking about, the single mom who literally can carve out 3 hours a week to be on a gym floor to do stuff. She shouldn't spend most of it on the elliptical. She should get stronger. The benefits vastly outweigh when you look at the aggregate. And I get, people arguing the pedantic of, oh no, like you burn more calories, running than strength training. You're fucking missing the point completely, right? So, again, but it's also delivering that message in a way that, people are like, fuck yeah, oh man, like cool. And then they fall in love with strength training and all of a sudden they just keep going with it. That's what I hope to.
We're going up and up. And especially for women, when you teach them like, oh wow, I can lift this much weight, I can do this, like the look in their eyes is just like, whoa. And then they keep on doing that, and they keep on, not just that, they start, like your post said, they start building more confidence. They start kind of like developing into like a better version of themselves, because now they know they have the confidence to do things that they've always been scared of. And from there on, they just keep on leveling up, and they get it to the next level. Like it's weird to say, but like I don't know how or when. I was probably not alive at that time, but it was weird for them to vilify strength training back in like what 20, 30 something years ago. But now the fact that we have it where it's like a lot more people are doing it is just like, again, like I said, it's just really interesting because like there's so many different avenues to where one can develop the confidence that they need. One can develop that life skill to be able to do certain things. And now you have the ability to be able to sort of just like, hey, I can do anything. And then it motivates them to keep on going and going and going. Personally, for me, the reason I actually started lifting was because like we were talking about like stress and stuff like that earlier when we started. One of the main reasons was because it was a therapy kind of thing. Like I needed something to be able to keep me away from being like causing trouble at school all the time, being someone who not being able to focus and all the stress that was going on at the time. And lifting for me at that time was one of those things where it's just like, okay, now I have this chain of energy, of negative energy that can kind of turn into a positive. And from when I was like 13 years old all the way up to now, that's exactly what I've been doing. And it's like it's been kind of just leveling up. Like, frick, I'm an IFBB pro. Like, jeez, wasn't even thinking about that. Like, it's insane.
And think about what you just said. Like with strength training, you show people a process that they'll learn to trust, that they're in control of. You mentioned stress. People have this misconception that stress is bad, universally bad. You can never have any stress, you're going to have a heart attack. Read Sapolsky's Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Good book, but it will literally be fucking stressed out thinking about avoiding stress. There's another book. It's called The Upside of Stress by Kelly McGonigal. She's a PhD who does a lot of cool stuff. And people who deal with a lot of stress don't necessarily have adverse health outcomes. It's being in a situation where you have no sense of control over the stressors in your life. And so, what does the gym teach you? That you can be in control of your outcome. You put in this effort, you get the nutrition right, you build muscle, you get stronger, you can watch the process,
Mhm.
you trust the process. And then, like we talked about earlier, that permeates into other aspects of your life. And it's an amazing outlet to deal with the things that are slightly beyond or way outside of our control. We can retreat to that gym. It's our therapy. It's, I think the word I used in that original post you talked about was sanctuary, right? I know
Yes.
a lot of people feel that way. It's
Mm.
certainly been a really important sanctuary for me for a long time. And it really does train you to gain a sense of control over the stressors in your world. And that can make all the difference in the world of someone's mental health and cascade through their entire life.
And usually when I train clients, one of the most interesting analogies that I use is just like, okay, listen, I know that you don't like to do this, you don't like to work out and stuff like that, but the first thing is you get yourself in here and you start small. You start small and you gradually work your way up. Like, yeah, the first few weeks you're gonna be sore, but that's everything in life. Like the first few weeks of anything in life you're going into that's new to you, there's gonna be stress. There's gonna be stressor. Stressor, I think personally can be a good and a bad thing. But in this case, in terms of like lifting and just life in general, it's also how you look at the stress that you're getting. In terms of lifting, if you are somebody who is working out for the first few weeks, it's your first time, yeah, you're gonna be sore. You're gonna be ridiculously sore. That's understandable, and that's undoubtedly gonna happen. But then, like the more that you kind of adapt to that stress and you get better throughout those progressions, those progressive overload, those intensities, and gradually doing it consistently, the more that stress is going to go away. But at the same time, you're always going to get more stress added into like whatever routine that you're working on. But the key is you have to adapt to it. And if you take that particular analogy and then kind of put it towards life itself, life is going to come at you with a lot of stress. If you're just sitting there and you're just like, okay, I'm stressed out, I can't do anything, like you're going to be complacent. You're not going to move forward. You just have to kind of get uncomfortable and be like, okay, I'm stressed. What can I do to kind of fix this? And then you just work towards it. There's always going to be more stress in life. There's always going to be more stuff coming at you. But at the end of the day, you're just going to have to just keep on moving forward and just keep on going. And eventually get to the point where like the stress that you had before is like, okay, it's not a big deal. Versus like when you started lifting 10 years ago, you had a lot of stress in terms of like lifting wise, but now you're just like, 300 pounds feels like, okay, it's not really a big deal. It's like you adapt to that stress. And if you use that gym methodology towards like your life and add it to supplement your life, eventually you see there's a lot of good benefits that come out of
Yeah, it builds resilience. It builds physical resilience, obviously, but it builds mental, emotional resilience. And I really think that there is no single better fucking thing that any human could do for themselves than to begin to strength train, to do it on your terms, at the level you want to.
it. Mm,
You mentioned before about the myth of women being deterred from it. We'll come back to that.
yeah.
But you get so much from that. We talked about the physical effects, we talked about the cascading life effects, but outside of a smoker quitting smoking, and we know the other thing that and people, this I can't believe this is controversial or people push back at this stuff, but the other thing that if someone is very overweight, whatever, like has a lot of body fat, one of the healthiest long-term things you can possibly do is lose that body fat. Yes, you can be metabolically healthy at heavier weights. Yes, we know that. But on an aggregate societal, level of averages, it leads to more adverse outcomes. So yeah, you can quit smoking, lose the body fat, but strength training is one of the best vehicles to get someone started at to lose the body weight. You get this pushback against diet culture. And quite frankly, diets on a statistical level are fucking unsuccessful, right? Doesn't matter how you go about them. But it's also statistic propped up by the yo-yo dieting cycle and the type of people who are preyed upon, who are vulnerable, desperate, but want quick fixes to complex solutions. They're not willing to make the major lifestyle change. That's where we come in. And I think one of the best ways to long-term major lifestyle change is to focus on strength training. This is also why I think we focus on strength training versus cardio, because someone who's going at cardio, I know is thinking about cardio as a fat loss modality. Cardio is a terrible fat loss modality. It is. It's awful.
Hmm.
You know how to layer it into good nutrition and strength training, and you have an idea of the calories coming into your system, and therefore you're trying to enhance the calories going out with a structured plan. Cardio is a great enhancer of fat loss,
Hmm.
but as its own brute force tool without additional structure and support, cardio is awful for fat loss. It is going to fail. If someone doesn't enjoy doing it, they're sure as shit not going to be consistent doing it long term.
Yeah.
So I hope that most people can make that distinction. So I still think that, the best message we can get out there into the universe is that strength training is wonderful for you, and we have to make it accessible. And then it's like, okay, let's touch on that, that myth about women getting bulky. And some people are like, oh well, that's a myth. Everybody knows, that's not true. 90% of the women that I sit in front of with a consultation say in some way, shape, or form, hey, I don't want to get too muscular. They find a way to say it. So they still fucking believe it, right? It's an emotional thing that people believe. And it's being told to them by insecure women who, and someone might push back at that, but it's other insecure women who are, unhappy with their own efforts. It's the person who brings in office donuts when they find out their coworker is on a diet. It's sabotage. You got to be wary. And sometimes it's not malicious, and sometimes it's, subconscious, even the person doing it, but it's still happening, right? So you got to identify the saboteurs and fucking deal with them. And then yes, we have these insecure men who don't want to see women start to get into shape, especially if they're in relationships. I've dealt with a lot of partners of clients of mine over the years, or other people I know, where one person started getting in shape, the other one wasn't making the effort, and the other one interfered in creative ways and really didn't support this effort. And that can be pretty toxic shit too. But either way, this myth lives, and women are worried about it. And like, think about it. Okay, like, yeah, you see guys like, I'm a big guy, but it took a fucking long time to do it. You're a big guy. Mike Isertel's a big guy. But what do most of the guys, young guys around gyms look like? They are fighting to put on muscle. They are absolutely desperate to put it on. And it is a slow struggle. What on earth makes any woman think she's going to step into the gym, do a set of shrugs, some curls, and all of a sudden she's going to have traps that hide her neck? That shit doesn't happen. And we know, and I don't like maligning bodybuilding women. Those images of the big jacks, the super elite of the old bodybuilding class of women, Miss Olympia stuff. Those images didn't do a lot of societal good, because it's an image that makes women fearful. And I do. This sounds like a bit of a double standard, a little harsher on female competitors who lie about drug use than men. I mean, okay, like, that's a complicated area, and we shouldn't care too much what people are on. But if you see a woman who's visibly so muscular, she's using steroids and she's claiming natural, that deters women from going to the gym. Now, Arnold has been open about his drug use over time, eventually. But for example, let's say you guys like Arnold's like, oh, I'm all natural, bro. A legion of young guys are like, fuck yeah, I could do that. I could get into the gym, and they start pressing and curling, which, okay, they got to learn how to do it right, but it's still better than, being out and, fucking vandalizing shit. So it's a double standard, and I know that, but one is driving young men to the gym, and the other is scaring women away from the gym. So we have to at least be cognizant of that, so that we create a better message and let women see all of the benefits of them training, physical and mental benefits, and that they're not going to get more. And fuck it, whenever we talk about this stuff, some women are like, I want to be muscular, I want to be jacked. Cool. Then you can build muscle. You got to work really fucking hard at it, just like any guy would. So let's give you the tools to do that. You can totally achieve that too. So it's not to assume that no women want to put on muscle. Tons of women. My girlfriend, she has great genetics of putting on muscle. She is strong as hell, and she loves this stuff.
Yeah.
So
it's funny.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was just gonna say, like, we were pushing a sled in the gym a couple weeks ago, and I put up on my Instagram story, and like, I put 4 plates aside on this thing, and I push it back and forth, and she's like, all right, well, she's gonna try to do it too, and she got it across the turf. Took her like a breather halfway through, but she did it. And people are looking at this. I got clients who are like, they do a plate and a half aside, and they're like tapping out, and they're 6 foot tall guys, are pretty athletic. They're like, oh my god, like, your girlfriend did this. So, and she loves that stuff. So it's just meeting each person, and especially each woman, where they're at. But I still think we do have to combat that myth. There's a lot of bullshit myths. People still, it was just out in the media that eggs are somehow bad for us again. It was some bullshit study that got spread around, right? No, fucking great. People argue about milk all the time. It's not this panacea of health, but it's certainly not this horrible thing either.
Mm.
And you pick everything else. I mean, people demonize sugar or fat or fucking carbs. I mean, the fact that we don't, we still have these massive chunks of the population that think carbohydrates are why we're fat, that don't believe in calorie metabolism. It's astonishing, but guess what? People believe it. Okay, so we still have to get a better message out.
Yeah,
So,
and that's
so
what I would like to do, because again, it's all about this information for wide selection of people. Um, it, it it's crazy, it's weird to say, but I think we should really start emphasizing more on like teaching people on dieting, not dieting, but just like proper eating habits and
yeah,
like strength training. Because like when I was in school, gym class was not wasn't really what I expected it to be. And diet and like eating wise, nobody even touched on it. But imagine if we started that early and start touching on it and like giving kids the right tool to be able to learn how to eat certain foods and stuff like that. And eventually when they get older, they'll understand like this is important, this is what we need to do and stuff like that. But it's weird to say, but it's lack of education.
I don't want to riff on this too much, but I mean, that's not the only problem with the stuff we're educated. I mean, where's the education on financial literacy for
Yeah,
people? Where's the education to learn how to do your taxes? Where's the education on, yeah, nutrition and activity?
exactly.
Uh, you
Where's
know,
the education in dating? It's just learn as you go.
human interaction, right? I mean, and I will insert this here. This might ruffle a couple of feathers, but Mike would agree with me. It's like we have a generation of young people thinking that communism is a great idea. I mean, where the fuck is that coming from? Holy fucking shit, right?
Mm.
Anyway, so I'm going to move off that because I
Yeah, we're
want
not going to dive into that, but yes, I do understand what you're
but
saying.
yeah, it's astonishing what's missing from the education of the modern youth. And but again, complaining about it's not helping. So
Yeah.
we still have to create a reach into worlds that maybe we don't yet do a good job of. Maybe that means teenagers. I'll give you a good example. People are maligning fitness professionals, making fun of fitness professionals going on to TikTok. I got a few friends, Jordan Syatt, Chad Hargrove,
Yeah.
gotten into TikTok. Okay, TikTok's got a younger generation on it. And okay, you can laugh and make fun of TikTok for song and dance shit. They're not doing that crap. But they are on a medium where there's a younger generation and they're building following rapidly,
Yeah.
which get which then they can then funnel interested people back into their Instagrams or onto email lists or whatever media you have, or your YouTube channels or your formal article writing.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, they're gonna have a lot of superficial followers, but within that, you're gonna meet people. And my hope is that, I mean, I'm not on TikTok. I've made Instagram my home for the last little bit because I found Facebook kind of toxic. But don't malign or discard TikTok as a potential avenue to reach people that we fucking need to reach. And if we could catch them earlier and they learn this stuff, well, maybe we save someone from an eating disorder. Maybe we save someone from going down the wrong road for 20 years. We've all had clients who figured it out in their late 40s or 50s and
Mm.
finally lost the weight and got on a sustainable plan after years of struggling with their body image and yo-yo dieting. Like,
Mm.
raise your hand there listening if you have a client who's had that experience. What if we can get in front of those people when they're 19 instead of 49 and
Yes.
change their lives there? So we have a powerful responsibility
Mm.
for this sort of stuff. And it keeps coming back to what I keep saying. It's like we are squandering that by arguing amongst ourselves about the pedantic 5% that we as fitness professionals don't agree with.
Mm.
I have great relationships across the industry, and there's a lot of people I love, and I really support and try to help the people I think are doing great. But I try not to spend any of my time because I have limited amount of time. I'm coaching full time. I'm still trying to write articles.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make sure that my social media reach is good. I have a podcast, and I've been getting guest appearances on podcasts all over the place recently,
Mm.
and I still have to make sure there's time for my girlfriend and my own training. And guess what I don't have time for? Or is a sink that steals from everything else is getting into these argumentative discussions on things that are not enhancing my life, are causing me stress, anxiety, worrying about what someone else is coming back and arguing about.
Mm.
And it's taking me off my mission. So, I hope that the fitness professionals listening to this take this one to heart. Because if you have grand ambitions to help more people, there are good ways to go about it. And I think there are meandering, ineffective ways to go about it. So it's up to you to choose, though. I mean, like you said about getting someone to make dietary changes, or choosing things in the gym. You're going to be a lot more successful if you choose it because you want to, not because I told you to go do it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's I've noticed that even from just like when I was being coached. Granted, I'm a little bit more tall because I want a little bit more success in bodybuilding,
Mhm.
but I've seen so many clients, so many other people's clients, especially when my Instagram spiked up from like 18,000 all the way to like 33,000. I had like a video that went viral, which is just kind of like posing in the chest video. And there was a lot of negativity within that video, but it's also, you get these people who just like have that time to kind of just troll other people. But I learned, my girlfriend was like, listen, you don't need to pay attention to these people. Just keep on doing what you're doing. And then ever since that happened, I've just been doing that. And I've been thinking of more creative ways to kind of get my message across. And I think one of the greatest things that I've kind of discovered back to like the whole anime aspect is like, I know like a lot of young kids love watching these animes and love watching these cartoons. So when they see somebody like me who's like at a top tier bodybuilding competitor and works out and like gives out all these like workout ideas, it motivates them to want to be able to do that. And then they get not only just want to work out, but they also get like good source of information that they can learn how to do the right things earlier before somebody else reaches out to them and kind of teach them the wrong way to get things. So like you said, you definitely have to, just with any parts of like our generation, some like when humans started kind of moving around, you have to be able to educate the young ones. And when you educate the young ones, you now have a future of generations of kids who now know better than the previous generations. And then from that point on, they just teach the right things, and people just keep on going and going and get to that point where we know what we're doing. But I think I'm kind of like sidetracking myself here. But yeah, my general goal is to kind of just do just that, be able to kind of provide these source of information, but at the same time make it fun, entertaining, and attract more people towards my space, and then just make everybody just either just be in shape or at least just be jacked or something.
And you get it, right? Like I like that idea about the anime. See, funny enough, I didn't grow up on anime. I'm one of the few that didn't, but I know that Dragon Ball Z is a big theme amongst the Renaissance periodization community, which is probably another reason why you gravitate to them. Besides the fact that Mike is jacked as hell and really smart,
Yeah.
I like Witcher. I love the video games. I've got like some, I don't know if you can see them from here, but some Witcher figures, Geralt and Triss and Yennefer up on my
The Witcher.
yeah, I love that stuff, right? And I love books, and anybody who follows my social media knows that I'm a huge fan of the band Tool. I went to Toronto to see them back in September last year. This is obviously before we got turned upside down by the current crap that we're dealing with. And yeah, so I went to two back-to-back concerts, and I'm glad I did, because the Tool concert was booked for June of 2020, obviously got canceled here in Edmonton. So it meant a lot to me to see them. I love that stuff. So yeah, it's for anybody who's in the training world, coaching other people listening, like fucking humanize yourself. Be a goddamn human, not a fitness robot, and let the world
Yeah.
see the shit you're interested in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm scared to like even try to dive into a show like Dragon Ball Z, because there's like a million bloody episodes. Or one young athlete that I train, he's big into Naruto, and
Yeah.
I think there's like decades of that one.
Mhm.
The only anime that I grew up on, I actually used to. I remember the old Robotech things; they were really cool. But Akira is a classic movie.
Yes, I have not watched that, but a lot of people have been telling me to watch it.
Oh, dude,
And
it's classic.
I think what detracts me from it is the fact that like the animations is so weird. But I have to sit down one day and watch it. I heard
Yeah,
the story is incredible.
it is tough going back and watching, sort of some of the stuff that feels a little dated. Like I grew up loving the real Ghostbusters, and the animation is a little dated, but it's still really good stuff. Or Transformers when I was a kid. Like I love shit like that. But it's not as bad as you think. And you just put yourself back into that place and tap into nostalgia. It can actually be kind of dangerous going back into nostalgic stuff, because it's never as good as you remember.
Yeah.
But then again, one of my favorite movies all time is the cartoon Transformers movie from like 1984, 85. Not the live action remakes with Shia LaBeouf. It's fucking annoying as hell in those things. The Transformers are pretty cool. The humans are annoying in those. But the original Transformers movie, and it's a spoiler, but Optimus Prime actually dies in this cartoon, and then he's replaced by another leader. but it's good. And they have a bunch of like famous voice actors who are famous back then. No one would have heard of them now.
Mhm.
It's just fun. It's a really cool movie. I could still sit down and watch it all the time. So yeah, like
Yeah, and it's also interesting that you actually brought that up, which is what this kind of thing is to kind of like get your audience to know like other aspect of who you are than just like the guy who writes out these articles, who trains people and stuff like that. I'm sure there's a lot more to you than just what you look like, the articles that you wrote. And if somebody who's like on social media is kind of like, let's say, offended by what you say, they might think of you a different way. But there's just so much more to just us. Like you said, humanize yourself. When you're on social media, you don't need to just post workout videos all the time. You don't need to post like pictures of you like naked all the time. You don't need to do like if you have stuff in your life and you want to kind of like show that, like show, hey, I do the exact same thing that you do. I do this, I do that. I go on dates, I do stuff. We go bowling and stuff like that. It's what I do with my girlfriend. Like we travel, we go places every weekend, we do stuff, and then we take these little weird pictures, which I haven't posted. We have a really nice video that we're gonna post up later on. But like every time we go on a date, or anywhere that we tend to travel to, we have like these pictures where like I'm holding her hand and like I'm in front, but she's kind of like holding my hand in the back and she's taking the picture. And it's something that's like usually kind of sensors kind of set in and other stuff. But it's like stuff like that. It's like everywhere we travel, we take these pictures and we kind of just like save it and stuff like that. But yeah, it's all about like I don't want people to just look at us or even like people who are rich and famous just be like that's all you are, that's all you're ready to offer. It's just there's just so much more things for us as lifters or people who generally just have money or are rich than just what money to offer them, what their body looks like and what articles that they write. Like I want people to be able to freely express themselves and everyone can just be like, oh wow, there's not much of a difference compared from me to that person, you know.
yeah, go beyond the superficial. And I think a lot of trainers maybe feel this pressure to be a little superhuman and infallible. And I find it really important to make sure that anybody who I'm engaged with knows the difference, right? And again, I think there's some trainers who go too far on the other end and they share way too much weird, negative personal crap,
Mhm.
or they get really out of their scope of practice. You know, you get coaches who all of a sudden are relationship gurus. That one is a bit goofy to me, right? It's like, I think you're stepping outside your depth.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think whenever fitness professionals wander outside of the scope of fitness or nutrition, I think that can be really problematic. All
Mhm.
of this year, we've seen a lot of fitness professionals who are, political scholars or medical experts, and I think that we aren't serving our following very, very well when we have arguments, and
Mhm.
they're also very polarizing right now. So I think that you can get off track really fast when you get into that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, but at the same time, like you said, let people see that human side, and you're way more relatable. And I think people will come for the quality information. I think they're going to stay because they really feel like they know you, and if
Mhm.
they have things in common with you, they're far more likely to want to reach out and engage with you. And that's again what this is all about, right? I mean, and I don't treat my media as a funnel for my coaching. I do mostly in-person training. I do a little bit of online, and I don't want to become that guy who does a full-time online coaching business. That's not for me. That's not my thing, right? But the social media has been a bit of fun. I want to connect people with the free stuff I'm doing. I want people to read the articles that I'm publishing, the career-based stuff or the training-based stuff that I put on T Nation. I'm
Mhm.
interested now in getting more people on my email list. And maybe someday down the road, I will turn into more educational, coursework or paid educational stuff for other coaches. But right now I'm doing like some straight up Gary Vaynerchuk, shit tons of jabs, and I'm not throwing a lot of hooks. I'm
Mhm.
not asking for a business there. Just based on my reputation and my referral network, I'm usually as busy as I want to be in person. That's rarely a struggle, right? I'm comfortably paying my bills and doing well. And I can, when the world is open to it, I can go and travel and do the things I want. If
Mhm.
I want the newest Xbox, I'll go buy the newest Xbox. Um, so I've been able to treat social media as a practice and a passion hobby and something that I've done because I enjoy it and I enjoy the interactions with people. And this is why you and I are here, is because we connected over social media. Instead of maligning it for its ills, for its evils, but being aware of the dopamine drip and the dopamine hits that social media can absolutely
Very
give you.
hard to control. I kind of got to that point where like when you're getting like all these like comments that kind of like praising you and stuff like that, you have to somewhat like step yourself away from that. And you ever watched the Spider-Man movie, the very first one when Uncle Ben died?
The Tobey Maguire one.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I think in most Spider-Man comics and movies, it's always like with great power comes great responsibility. Because
Mhm.
when you have such a huge following, you have all these people basically just boosting your ego. You have to be able to kind of like step back for a little and just realize, okay, I have all this responsibility and I have all this power coming at me, whether it just be comments or just people just like posting your stuff and stuff like that. You have to be able to like mitigate that and just be like, okay, I just have to focus on what I have to do, which is just helping people and don't let it get too big, but at the same time it comes back to that human element of just like you're just a human just like yourself. One of the things I tend to find myself that I dislike on social media is when people try to put me on a pedestal
Mm.
and they just because I look a certain way and I have this whatever physique goal that they want to attain to and they're inspired by it, they put me on such a high pedestal that they expect me to be on like a higher standard than everybody else. Don't do that. Please don't do that. Because I'm just a person just like you. I don't need to be held to a higher standards because when you put me to a higher standards, I have like a lot of responsibility that I have to act in a certain way to please the audience. Like I don't necessarily want to do that. I just want to have fun with it, promote what I got to promote, and make people just get more in shape and stuff like that, and engage with a lot of different people without having the pressure of just being like, oh, you're Paul, you're this big jack bodybuilder. Is anything that you say hold values, and we put you at a higher standard than us? Like, no, just put me here.
See, people that I know let this stuff go to their head a little bit too much, and then they've fallen from grace a little bit when they've made missteps and done some stupid shit. Uh,
Hmm.
and I don't know if it's out of arrogance or thoughtlessness or a sense of infallibility, but I witnessed that stuff happen. So yeah, you have to be on guard against this stuff. And let's be honest. I mean, like I said, I just hit 10,000 followers. 10,000 followers is a very, very small following in the grand scheme of a lot of the people in our industry. But it's been a group that I've had a ton of engagement with those people. I really value them. I really like the people who've been, sending me messages or interacting on my feed. A lot of coaches. I'm definitely trying to lay a foundational blueprint that they can follow for a lot of like career success. Again, growing social media. There's a lot more to just growing social media.
Yeah.
And I think this is important to say too, is especially with my social media growth was predicated on relationships. I mentioned Mike Isertel boosted mine a lot with sharing my stuff. And that's from years of supporting his work, diving into what he's doing, going to like paying to go to his live seminar, educational stuff, and
Yeah.
then sitting down over dinners and then have him on my podcast several times to promote him to the greater universe, right? And then I mentioned like literally Brian Cron just fucking came to my house. The guy I've been reading his stuff on Teen Nation for a decade to
Mhm.
pick up some stuff that he'd arranged that I would take care of for him. And so we had a good chat about some stuff going forward. And we're gonna you know help him with a little bit of a project and the various other people that I've been able to have those relationships with who've been in supporting and sharing me. And then that's been writing for major publications for the last couple of years. And I'm going to pursue that even more, see where I can take that. And then the podcast. So, if someone wants to start with the social media, okay, I get that. And you can do a lot with that. But I think it's a good idea to build a lot of other career capital and then turn that career capital around into building a social media following. If
Mhm.
that
That makes complete sense. I actually know Mike actually helped boost up mine a little bit as well. But previously, when I was younger, I met up and had conversation with like Alan Aragon, uh, interacted with Brad, interacted with Mike, Jared, interacted with some pro bodybuilders because when I was younger, I was surrounded by people who just wanted to improve the community as a whole, and they were just overall just more successful. So I kind of gravitated towards those people because I don't know if Gary V said it or something like that, but like you surround yourself with the people that you want to be with because that motivates you to want to be better. Because they're already all the way say up here, you always just want to kind of get up to where they are. But if you're hanging out with a group of people who are just like down here, you're not really going to go anywhere.
it's true. And you have to go through that. I relentlessly post about this too. You have to unfollow or remove people from your life who are negative, who want to it's not about being disloyal to old friends, because your old friends who aren't on the same mission we're on, we should value them. But if they are negative and abusive or selfish in ways that are detrimental to you, at a certain point have to recognize this. There's a group of old pals I had, old gym bro buddies of mine, workout partners, who I'd known for several years, and there's a couple of good guys in that midst, but I had to get rid of two of them. One was deeply problematic, and the other was selfish and jealous and would interfere in actually some of my relationships with my clients. And I had to cut them both out of my life, and make very hard declarations to the other friends, like, don't bring them around. I don't want them around anymore. And it was really important to get rid of them. And there's been a couple of other relationships in my life along the way that I had to do the same thing with, because they're stealing a lot of my energy, bringing a lot of negative energy to my world.
Yeah.
And it's like, think about your social media feed. Those people who are always posting really negative, controversial stuff that creates a lot of anxiety, a lot of negativity, a lot of anger in you. And if it's someone on Facebook that you quote need to keep that relationship with, you can unfriend anyone, but you can unfollow them. Or sometimes, especially around things like elections or when controversial shit's going on, I'll snooze certain people for 30 days. Kind of,
Yeah.
I get that off my feed. Instagram, be very, very careful who you follow and who you engage with, because you can only scroll through one person's post at a time on your feed.
Mhm.
That is being taken up by someone who creates negativity, anxiety, fear, anger. It's hiding someone you really care about, who is sharing positive stuff. So you have a duty to yourself to clean out, unfollow, and remove the negative stuff, the stuff that is not serving you, so you create room for the good people in your life. I have a lot of good people in my life that I am really grateful for. A lot of close friends in person, a lot of industry friends who've been wonderful, and I want to see more what they're doing. And I have to get rid of the bad stuff. And there will be, like you've alluded to, there will be people along the way who don't want to see you succeed, who are negative. They resent what you're doing, and they're there. There's not that many, but they exist. Well, they're fuel to me too. I don't let them live, they're not living in my mind, but they're there. And every time that I do something cool in my career, then I'm constantly making sure that I'm disappointing the people who want to see me struggle or fail.
Mhm.
It's just that extra little bit of fuel to make sure I keep working hard at it. Because I really want to disappoint them. But that's the extent of it, right? I don't let them live rent free in my head.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean that makes perfect sense. And I'm actually going to end this here, but I was initially going to have this be about just who you are and behind the body, as kind of just talk about like just your overall stuff. We covered most of that, which is good. But I've also, while we were having this conversation, I think it's also good to get a group of coaches, a group of fitness influencers, and be able to sit down and have these discussions. And then that way we can kind of teach others who, not just others, like regular individuals who work out or lift weights or do anything like that, and motivate them and give them a more positive outlook towards just life and towards just like fitness and like all the struggles that go through with it. So I will have to figure out a name for this one, because this is going to be the first episode of something completely different, because we're going to go down a road where we want to be able to promote more positive people, have more influence on others, and then kind of just see like what we can do and spread the whole message to create a much better, positive, influential community where everyone can come together and not have to struggle, not have to fight, not have to be negative. And like you said, when you're scrolling down through your news feed, if we can you just take those people who are just negative and then put them in there with the ones who are positive, now you have a list of people who are just overall positive, who drive you, who motivates you, who you want to be able to support and give the information that you need to make them be better. And now when you give them all those options to be better, they'll give other people to be better. And it just creates this whole domino effect. And now you would just have a community of just good, positive individuals that would just create a much better fitness atmosphere.
And that is how we counter the misinformation being put out there by the problem influencers in our space, right? And it's a much more constructive way to do it. This is fun. I love this conversation. And, just one last thought there. It's what you were hoping to find about kind of who I am. It permeates through everything we discussed, right? It's just
Yeah, that's what it's also in there. It's actually going to be
not
in.
talking about me.
Hmm.
It's the philosophies as how I engage with my career, my life, my clientele, which are the reason why I have all this cool stuff, other stuff going on in my career. Right? They underpin everything, right? They're still the priority. So that is the essence of who I am and what I've done. So I think that's still an important message to get across. So I appreciate you having me on here. This has been really awesome, Paul.
Yeah, and before we go, would you like to give just something of a quote or a teaching advice to the audience that you think would be very beneficial? I mean, this entire thing has been a list of advice, but something that you want to directly just push out there.
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, there's certain books that I really love, and I think that if anyone's read The Obstacle is the Way, Ryan Holiday's work, is you have to control your attitude and your actions in the face of under control. That's important. And I really do like the idea of creating room for more positive stuff, both positive inputs in your world by cutting out the negative stuff, and then continuing to be a really positive source of information and energy for the people in your space. And don't let the negative stuff crawl in there too much or gets taken off your mission by engaging with it. Right? I think there's a better route.
All right. That's good. And I greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Andrew. I'm looking forward to sort of do more stuff because I have a friend named Charles, and I think we'll have like a 3 conversation eventually when you have time. But other than that, this has been great.
Anytime. Is that Charlie Young?
No, it's Charles Vogel.
Oh, I know that name. I've heard that name. So okay.
Well, there you go. But yes, thank you.
My pleasure.